Hello and welcome to Learning Music with Pat. I've decided today that I'll start off by teaching a lesson, just as if you were here. Now, I've said before, you can learn to play a lot by yourself, but you really need to have a coach to do it because you can pick up some really bad habits and not know that you're doing it. So I'm going to assume that there's a student sitting beside me, and maybe we're on our second or third lesson, and maybe they know 2 or 3 notes, because you really learn a note or two every time that you go. Once you get started, the first time you have a lesson, of course, is learning how to hold it, learning how to breathe, learning how to tongue, and tonguing's a necessity, and all of those things, and how you put the instrument together. And then after that, you start learning how to make a sound. That's important. But let's assume you've gone beyond that, and I'll do just a little review of that with you, and then you're playing your first 2 or 3 notes, and then you're learning to play looking at music. And I have written some music. It's going to seem kind of dull maybe, but it's music that's written for a person who's had like maybe 2 or 3 lessons. They know 2 or 3 notes. Believe it or not, you can play music with 2 or 3 notes. You can play music with 1 note. 2 notes is better. 3 notes is better. When you get to 4 and 5 notes, there's quite a bit of music you can play. You have quite a range. So it's kind of a challenge, but if you have a student, or if you are a student and you're just learning and you only know 3 or 4 notes because that's the level that you are, it's hard to find written music that's acceptable to you because you're going to want more. And I think it's a challenge, especially if you're an adult and you're a beginner, because as an adult, hot cross buns and jingle bells isn't going to do it for you. The kids love it and they want to play it all the time, and I always let them do it because I think it's important to let them do what means something to them, and then you can take them on from there and get further. But for an adult, hot cross buns just doesn't do it. And yet, if you're a beginner, you have to play real simple stuff because you aren't at a level where you can play something that's more complicated. So what I do a lot of times, I will write music that will fit the level of development that a student is at. Now, that level of development is going to change rapidly as you learn more and more and more. And of course, an adult will learn a lot more quickly than a child will, but a child can learn pretty rapidly too. So I want to do a little review with you as if you were sitting here with me, and then we'll play a song. We'll play this song here. I've got 2 songs here, and we'll probably tackle both of them, but there's a lot you can learn about a song just by looking at it. The time signature, the key signature, the range of notes, the fingering of the notes, the timing of it as you're playing it, reading the music, because you read music, it's like a book. So first of all, let's just do a little review. So supposing you're sitting beside me, or if you have an instrument, this is a good time to review by getting your instrument out and working with me on it. If you have a sasuto, song flute, any of those little instruments that a recorder or recorder-like, anything that I teach will work with them. It'll also work pretty much for a flute and a saxophone and other woodwind instruments, because there is a remarkable similarity in terms of fingerings between these instruments. The other thing is, as far as timing is concerned, reading the music, the key signature, whether it's fast, whether it's slow, that's all going to be the same no matter what instrument you play, as long as you're playing an instrument that's in the treble clef. So I am just going to review, and we need to review this every so often anyway, because I don't know who's watching or what level that you're at. So you come in and you pick up the instrument, and the first thing that you learn, of course, is how you hold it. And you know, just from what I've told you before, your left hand always goes on the top and your right hand always goes on the bottom. I repeat this every time because I don't know how many students that try to reverse it. They don't see any reason why they can't do it this way instead of doing it the right way, but it does not work right. And you would soon find out when you get into more advanced music that you just can't do it right. The other thing I have to stress too is you don't flatten your fingers on the keys. You just can't flatten them, and have them available so that if you have to jump between notes or have intervals between notes, you have to be able to close your fingers always completely on the finger holds. So you can't just have one finger sloppily on it, half closed, half not closed, because then you're just going to squeak it, or you're going to get a note that you don't want to get. So it's important that you just do that right. And also in the back, for what we do for here, and when we get into the higher notes, of course, it won't be the case, but what we do here is keep that thumb hole closed. I wish you could see it as I'm doing it, but you can't. If you want an octave, you slide it down about halfway. You don't have to pick it up. You slide it about halfway, and you'll jump an octave. If you're doing a D and you have to take it off completely, of course, then you raise it off, because you can't have it on at all. You won't get the note that you want. So that's a little hard to show when I have to have the instrument with the backside toward me. So you have that all set. Then you have to think in terms of how do you position your mouth. Well, the mouthpiece, you've put it together so that everything's in line. I would always check that, of course. Then the mouthpiece goes in the mouth about the third of the way. Now that varies a little depending upon what a person is comfortable with, how large their mouth is, but it's in general about a third of the way up. And then your front teeth always go on the top of the instrument. Now that's true for saxophones, and that's also true for clarinets. So you see there's a lot of comparisons there. And your bottom lip just curves a little bit over your teeth. So and it's very comfortable. Once you get used to it, it's very comfortable. And you have to remind yourself of that when you first start playing. This is the way I do it. I pick up the instrument. The left hand is on top. The right hand is on the bottom. The fingers are curved. I've got my thumb hole closed. And for the fingers that are not being used, say we're playing a B or an A, which is what we're going to be doing this morning, you curve your fingers and it's like over. You don't touch the holes, you don't have to, but it's over in case you really need it. Suppose we go from an F to an F sharp. Your finger should be right there so it can immediately go down without any trouble. Now this does take a little practice, and I know I review it over and over and over, but these are the basics that you have to do in order to be able to play an instrument well. Now, if you had taken like 2 or 3 months of lessons, we wouldn't go over that, but I don't know where you are in terms of what you know. So for the sake of beginning students, it's wise to do this anyway. And then you actually start blowing. So usually you start with a very easy note. The B is usually what's done. On the flute, it's going to be the B flat, because with the B flat, since you're holding it out to the side, you can use that for balance. But you put your finger, you can put your right finger, the little finger, on the instrument to help balance it. Your mouth will balance it. The thumb hole in the back that's covered will balance it. You have your right thumb on the back side. There's no specific place to put it. Now I know that some instruments like the song flute and the tonettes have a little area, a little round raised area, and you put it right there. You don't actually need to do that. The recorders don't do that, but that helps to balance the instrument. And you can put, as long as you're dealing with just the left hand notes on top, B, A, and G, that you can put your right finger, little finger down, and balance the instrument with it like that. It's perfectly balanced, and I'm not changing any of the notes by having my right finger down. If I tried to put another finger down, at some point I'd change the note. You could do it with this set of notes or holes, but you couldn't do it with this, because I'd be playing, I'd be getting it off pitch, or I might even be getting another note. I'd flatten a note. But the flutes do it all the time. Students who are learning to play the flute, you teach them to keep the right lower finger, the little finger down, to help balance the flute. So they're playing with these fingers, and this flute balances with the little finger on the right hand. Although sometimes it's used for a note, and then you don't use it for balance. If you're getting down to a F, E, and D, you don't need that for balance. And if you try to use it for balance, what's going to happen is you're actually going to change the note instead. So its value is basically for the upper notes, not the lower notes. So we review all of that. Now I'm going to play this top piece first, and then we'll go over it. I'll show you the fingerings and everything, but let me play it. It's a song that I wrote that's based just on 4 notes, B, A, G, and I think I have a C, C, B, A, and G, so that these are the notes. C, B, A, G. Now remember, we have been looking at B, A, G, F, E, D. So we're dealing with B, A, G. And if you want that C, you leave this finger down, this middle finger stays down, the other 2 go up. When I deal with children, I say, just think of it as like a puppy. The ears are up, but the nose is down, and it helps them to remember. Anything I can get to have them remember, and the thumb hole, of course, is closed. So here's my G to my C. And if I were doing another, and I will be on the next song we do, I'll be doing the D. Once you get to that C, just lift the thumb off and you have a D. And that would be an exercise that I would write out. G, A, B, C, D, lift that thumb off, and then go back, put the thumb back on, and you're back on the C, B, A, G. Then if you wanted your F sharp, you'd put this middle finger down on the second hole in the second row of 3. And you've got practically a whole octave there. Well, let me play this piece, and it's just short. It's only based on 4 notes, and it's necessary to play simple stuff before you can play hard stuff, so don't be put off by the fact that it's simple. Simple, but it is definitely a song, and it's not hot cross buns, but it's a simple song. So let me go through it. I'll go through this song, and what can you learn from this? Well, I've got 3-note waltz. It's actually a 4-note waltz. Whoops, sorry, I got the wrong page, one or the other. I got the wrong page. Let me just switch this. Yeah, this is what I'm doing. All right, so what do you get here? You have your time signature. It's 3/4 time. That's waltz time. That means there are 3 beats to each measure. Now, as we've seen before, you have a 5-line staff. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 lines in your staff. And these are bar lines, and the notes that go between those bar lines constitutes a measure. 3/4 means there are 3 quarter notes, or the equivalent of 3 quarter notes. So this would be, even though it's a whole note, it would be worth 3 beats. And the reason it's worth 3 beats is that it has the same amount of value as what the time signature says it has, so that's 3 beats. This is a half note, so this is 2 beats, and this is a quarter note, this is 1 beat. So if you're counting to yourself, it would be 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Those quarters are all one beat. And there's no flats and there's no sharps in it. It's just one, it's just the key of C, which has no sharps and flats. And so this is your C, the added one, C, B, A, G. I've written a whole waltz based upon 4 notes. And you get your hold there. That means you hold this over like these two are one note. You don't tongue that note. If you have a hold, you don't tongue that second note. You hold it over like they were one note. So that means this is going to be 6 beats because they are 2 whole notes, and the whole note, each whole note is worth 3 beats because according to the time signature, that is a 3-beat measure. So this is 3 beats, this is 3 beats, this is 3 beats, and this is 3 beats. So instead of tonguing here, then you have that hold, and that connects those 2 notes together as if they were one note, even though they're not. Then you have another whole note, half note, quarter notes, whole note, half note, quarter note, and you go all the way through. The other thing that you have a rest. This is 1 quarter rest, so you hold that rest for 1 beat. So you hold this for 2 beats, it's a half note. 1, 2, rest, okay? And let's see, what else do we have? It's a simple piece, so there's not a lot to it. These 2 double lines means that the song is now over. That's the end of the piece. That's your symbol. There are a lot of musical symbols, which we're going to get into. As you read music, you read it like a book, as I said before. It's not a bad little song. If you're going to practice it and you're a beginning student, then what you're going to do is you are going to play it slow. So I'm going to play it slow, and the count would be like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. It may seem duller than toast when you hear it, but this is the way that you have to learn, because you're learning every note, and the notes are all new to you because you're a beginner. So let me play it, and I'm going to play it slow. So it's finished. Now, the other thing you need to remember is that when you get to a whole note, you may have to stop and take a breath. That wouldn't be impossible. Everybody breathes. And what you would do is, I normally would put a breath mark. I didn't do it. So a lot of music doesn't have breath marks. But what you would do, I would take 1, 2, 3, 4, and put a breath mark right there. It looks like a little apostrophe or a little comma. That's what it looks like. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, another comma. Now, in beginning music, it's often put in. In advanced music, it's not, because you kind of know when you need to take a breath, and you know how you can space it. You would make, supposing you need a breath right here, you would make that note a little bit shorter, not a lot shorter, and take your breath and then play the next note. And you can do it so smoothly that people don't hardly notice. It's not as if I'm going to say, I need a breath. So let's see, I'll play a note and then pretend I need to take a breath. I'm not stopping and making it obvious. I once had a student who came in, and she had been taking lessons on piano, but then she wanted to go to flute. And she had a little knowledge about flute, but not much. She made a separation between every single note. And I said, you can't do that. You have to hold the note up until the next note is played, so it's smooth. And if you're tonguing, you can hear the fact that the person's tonguing because it's not mishmashed together. But it's smooth enough so that there's not a lot of separation. I just made that up. But at any rate, you just tongue, and you hold a note until you tongue it, and then after you tongue it, you continue with the note. And there's not a big separation. It can be very, very smooth. You don't want to make big separations. And you tongue most of your notes. Some of them are going to be held, or some of them are going to be slurred, but you tongue most of your notes. And that means one of the things that you have to learn when you first start out is how to tongue your notes. And that's something that you have to get used to. I've had students spend weeks just learning how to make a sound. So you wouldn't get discouraged if it doesn't come immediately, but once it starts to come, then it's very, very natural, and you don't think about all of these little things, but as you're learning, you have to think about all these little things. So I'm going to close it here. We're about out of time, and we'll continue with this next week. Please join me then.